All right, great. So while people are still filing in, I'll start off with some basic introductions. My name is Sam. I'm the Partnerships and Communications Manager here at Fairy Godboss. And if you don't already know, Fairy Godboss is the largest career community for women. Our platform supports women throughout their careers with free resources like company reviews, job listings, webinars with various experts, virtual recruiting events, and a community where you can be honest about yourself and your triumphs and failures, either as yourself or anonymously. So welcome to our latest installment of our Discovery series, where we're taking a look at non-traditional career paths for women and talking to experts in the field. You might be looking to change your career path, or maybe just interested in about hearing industries you never even heard of before. So that's the goal of this series. Before we get things started, we will be taking questions throughout the webinar. So if you have any, feel free to use the Q&A feature. It's at the bottom of your screen. Or you can leave a question in the chat. I'll be monitoring both. But yeah, if anything comes up, just leave a question and we'll make sure we get to it. And this webinar will also be recorded and sent out tomorrow in a follow-up email. We'll also have great resources in there, some future events, and an article that kind of summarizes how you can work in business development. So with that being said, here with me today is Catriona O'Kane. Catriona, thank you so much for joining me today. And we'd love to hear a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Samantha. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here and just to provide everyone with a little experience of my experience from working in BD. From the accent, you can probably tell that I am originally from Ireland. So I started my career in Ireland before then deciding to move stateside, and I've been living in New York now for 4 years. I work as a BD manager in the payrolling industry. My career started in marketing, and I did that for quite a while. I worked in different industries such as telecoms and entertainment before deciding to make that transition, and I'll probably talk a little further about that and how I made that transition. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So please tell us, what is business development, and then how did you get to working in the industry?
Yeah, so business development is actually a very interesting role. I think it varies per company and per industry. So there's no one specific job description as to what business development is. Broadly speaking, often it is bringing a business to market and getting clients and developing that business to grow its revenue. How organizations define that and what they expect within that role can really vary. So for somebody that's thinking about going into BD, just be really careful to look at the job descriptions and look at what the expectations are of that role. For me, my role in business development is really to grow our business, to increase our revenue, to strengthen our partnerships. So a big part of my job is looking at new clients. How do we obtain those? How do we reach? How do we talk to them? And then building out different budget plans in order to do so. And then once those clients are engaged, converting them to actual clients. So taking them through the sales cycle. So my role has a sales element to that, negotiating with them on costings, the contracts, and then a light touch management once they're in life. Another aspect of the role often is partnerships. So I'll work with identifying different potential industry partners that we can work together with, we can refer to, that can refer business to us, creating those and then continuously managing those relationships in life. And then another element for my company, but maybe not for all of them, is about doing thought leadership. So later today, I was just saying to Samantha that I'm filming a video that's going to be sent out within the industry about different updates that I've had, and we write a lot of articles. So it does typically vary, but often what we see the most is it'll come down to sort of a sales element and a partnership element.
Yeah, so is this something you always knew you wanted to do, or did you learn about it kind of later in life?
Yeah, so I learned about it much later in life. As I said, I started my career in marketing. So I studied communication, advertising and marketing at college, always thought I'm going to work in advertising. I think I just watched too many episodes of Mad Men and just thought like, this is it for me. So I worked in marketing for a couple of different organizations, and I liked certain elements of it, but there were certain parts about the role that just I didn't know if it was like the right fit for me long term. So what I actually did was I had heard about a lot of my friends, they were moving into BD. So I started like, you know, talking with them, meeting with different people in the industry, just to learn a little bit more about what the role actually entailed. And then I sat down and I looked at the previous roles I had had. I looked at the skills that I had used. I looked at what I liked about those roles and what I didn't. And from that, I started to get a really clear indication of what I wanted to do going forward. So what skills I wanted to use, what I thought my strengths were. And thankfully for me, yeah, that really closely aligned with a sort of sales and BD role. So then when I started looking for jobs, I wasn't particular about the industry or the company. What I would do is I would first look at the job description, and I would look at what are the attributes of this role and how well do I think this fits my skill set. If I thought it was a good fit, then I would look at the industry and look at the company. So probably the reverse way of how most people look for jobs. But for me, utilizing a certain skill set was what I thought was the most important thing. And that's how I transitioned. I didn't think I was going to work in payrolling. I don't think any child thinks when I grow up, I'm going to work in payrolling. But for me, the role was fantastic. And when I met with the company's team and the CEO, I just had such a good feeling about the organization and what they were doing. And I'm a big believer in trusting your gut. So that's how I came into this industry.
Cool. And I know you kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, but what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so my day-to-day, it really varies. And that's one of the aspects that I really love about this role. So no 2 days are the same. But I suppose the key breakdowns are I'll spend quite a bit of time looking at who potential clients might be. So really looking at the marketplace, looking at who they are and identifying different ways that I can reach them. So that can be anything from email outreach to LinkedIn to actual cold calling, and then looking to set up meetings with them. We get a lot of business from referral partners. So another part of my job will be like being on calls with potential clients, a lot of in-person meetings. So it's not really an office-based role. You'll spend a lot of time out meeting with different people. I attend a lot of events and go to conferences, so there is quite a bit of travel with the role as well. And then another aspect of my day-to-day will be managing relationships with people that we have partnerships with, checking in with them, negotiating contracts, and really guiding people through the process.
Okay, cool. And I think I had this question as well, but it came from the audience too. So are people in business development considered sales personnel, or is there a difference? And I kind of had a similar question of, can you ever separate the sales from business development, or is that a key aspect to it?
I think that varies company to company. As I mentioned, every role is different. My business development role is fairly sales orientated. So I'd say probably 50% sales, 50% partnerships and marketing and thought leadership, which hopefully should all eventually lead to sales. I know that there are certain roles in BD that are very specifically just partnerships and just looking at, if you have a piece of technology, how to integrate that into other platforms, looking at how to develop the business. So I think for the most, there will be a sales element, but I don't think that is a requirement.
Okay, cool. So Yvonne, yes and no.
Yeah, I know,
to answer your question.
Not super helpful.
No. Honestly, that makes sense. And of course, positions are going to vary between companies. It's only natural. Yeah. So now that you're working in business development, what is the best part of your job and the worst part of your job? And you can answer that any way you want.
Yeah, so for the best parts, I actually genuinely love my job. I'm very thankful, very grateful to have the opportunity. The best parts for me are you get to talk to people all the time. So you're communicating with people, you're going to meetings. You know, a large part of the role is just about your verbal communication and working with people. And you get to go into organizations and think really strategically about that organization's business and look at what their challenges are and how your solution can solve their challenges. So you get to be really strategic. You get to work with some really incredible people and really help drive their business forward, which I really love. For me, getting to travel is such an amazing aspect of the role, but I know that's not for everyone, but I really enjoy it. And I love the fact that no day is different. So some days you're doing webinars and you're doing videos, and then the next day you're in meetings, and then maybe another day you're in the office working with the various teams to set up what's needed in order to get a sale across the line. So you really get that varied work aspect. And I think for me, the role's got a lot of potential. It is what you make of it. There's a lot of opportunities for career progression. A lot of people will move into more strategic roles, or maybe they'll go into more, because you're dealing with a lot of financials, you know, you can move into more commercial based roles. So there is really good career progressions opportunities within it. And it's also a very challenging role. I don't think it's one for the faint hearted. I think it's a lot harder than what people might think. So I think that's what I really like about it too. I feel very challenged on a day-to-day basis. The tough parts of the role and the challenges are that it is a lot of hard work. If you're trying to line up a meeting or a call with a potential client, and I know that's only the sales aspect, you're probably going to get 100 more rejections than you're going to get yeses. So you do have to build up a thick skin. You have to become very resilient and very persistent and be very self-motivated. In my role, there's nobody telling me how to do something, what's the right way, and how many times to do something in order to get a result. So you're often trying new things, you're testing them, you're seeing if it works. And if it doesn't, you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself down, and try again. So you do just have to be really resilient, really self-motivated. So there's a lot of hard work that happens behind the scenes, but often, you know, the rewards are much greater than that.
Of course. And I mean, you can kind of turn your negative almost into a positive of, you know, you get to be a self-starter and you get to take all these risks and chances.
Exactly. So they're not exactly negative. So I think it can be disheartening sometimes when you just have to keep the vision in mind of what you want to achieve. And then the minute you get a win, you're delighted. So
yeah. Cool. So what makes business development a great career choice specifically for women? You know, we've talked to a lot of different people, but does this offer better salaries, remote work options, flexible environment? What's the biggest draw you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great career for women. And I think dependent on the industry, some industries are underrepresented. So I think there's great opportunity to come in there and really make an impact. The salary is definitely above average. You'll get like a really competitive base salary, and then on top of that, opportunities to make commission if it is a sales-based role. When looking for opportunities, be mindful of, is the commission capped or uncapped? If it's uncapped, then you have unlimited opportunities to really push up your salary, but in most BD roles, the base salary is super competitive as well. So it's a really good option. Dependent on the company, a lot of organizations offer BD roles to be remote, and then you'll be able to work from home, and you are in charge of your own calendar. I line up all my own meetings. It's up to me. If I want to do those all in one day and just have one day where I'm out and about and just go for it, well, then that's up to me. So you can have really flexible options as to how you manage your time. The one thing I would note is it's probably longer hours than what you would get in other roles. I'm often, going to breakfast meetings at 8 a.m. in the morning, or I'll have events in the evening. So dependent on the industry and dependent on the role, I think sometimes you will have to work more than what you might do in typical roles.
Gotcha. I mean, we have so many people I know on the Fairy God Boss website asking about remote options in that flexible work environment. So, you kind of have to weigh your options. You might be working more, but if you get to determine your own schedule, for some people, that's definitely more of a benefit than anything else.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's just about how you manage your time. So if you're working remote or you're managing your own calendar, maybe you finish up early and you do what you have to do, but then you have to log back on to get stuff done. For me personally, there's no real drive as to how the work is done and what way that's fulfilled. It's about the results that you get. And I think that's pretty commonplace within this kind of role. So as long as you find a way that makes it work for you and you're able to get the results, then I don't think really most companies are pretty flexible in how that is managed.
Cool. So now looking at the career progression, how does that work? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's as I said, it's a very self-motivated role. So I think you have a lot of opportunity. I know that within my organization, I work extremely closely with our CEO and with our senior leadership team. So within the role, you have a lot of visibility to people within the organization. You're dealing with the key players, and then with that, that's bringing potential to move forward, to move up, depending on what you want. I think it also depends on the size of your organization. I work actually for quite a small company. So within that, you have certain opportunities, and within larger companies, there's definitely a lot of potential to move into various roles. I know a lot of people that have moved into very commercial based roles. A big part of what we do in our role is often pricing up deals, looking at how much you're going to charge, how much margin are you going to make in that deal. So you become very familiar with an organization's pricing and their structure, and that very easily lends itself to a transition towards that. And then you're also working a lot on strategy and consulting with businesses, and you have to be a very strategic thinker. So I think there are great opportunities to progress within this role, but you will be expected to demonstrate that yourself and find it. If you're working in a business development role, you'll probably be expected to develop these opportunities for yourself. So it's about what you want to achieve and making sure that you're working towards that.
Cool. And you mentioned that you work with the C-suite and the CEO. Is that because you're a smaller company, or is that pretty typical for somebody working in business development?
I think that's very typical. If you're looking to progress a deal forward, often within these deals, there might be certain things that have to be done against the norm of the company and the way you work. You might have to make some changes. And with that, you're going to have to work with the senior team in order to implement those changes, and also to make sure that they're in line with the company's strategy and vision, because not everything is as straightforward. So I think that's very typical within the role, and also because you are bringing in new business, and it's very important for the organization. It is something that's taken very seriously. You're a very well respected person within the organization. You're contributing to the profit, to the margin. So what you're doing is very valuable to the company. So I think often within all organizations, that is pretty common.
That's an amazing opportunity for a lot of people too, who in other positions, you might see the CEO twice a year. You get to talk to the CEO basically every single day in a role like this, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. And you work really collaboratively too, because one thing that's really about this role as well for us is you're really invested in the long-term vision of an organization. So the BD team is often the only people that are out on the ground, that are meeting with customers, you're meeting with industry partners, and you're also aware of what the competition are doing. So you're essentially your company's eyes on the ground. So you're the people that need to feed back into the organization. What is happening? What do we need to do with our company? What does the company need to know in order to make strategic changes to stay ahead of the curve? So you're actually, you're an integral part of the organization and where it's going in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So with all of that being said, if somebody watching this webinar right now wants to get into business development, what should they do? Where should they start?
Yeah, I think for me, I got into the role not having worked in BD before. So I think a lot of skills are very transferable, and really think about and perhaps do the exercise that I did. Look at your previous roles, look at what you did, and see if you think it's going to be a good fit. I think when looking for roles, think about what a BD person does and try and replicate that in your job application. I actually was told by this company the only reason I got an interview, because I didn't have any experience, was because my cover letter was very impressive. So, write a good cover letter. You're trying to prospect a company. So that's what they're going to be looking for. So take a lot of care. If you can find out who the hiring manager is and contact them directly, I would say absolutely go for it. Be brave, do it. And I think as well, like there's a lot of things that if you want to work on yourself and develop yourself, like key skills would be your communication, negotiation, confidence. And those are all things that you can read books on, you can do courses on. They're all things that you can really work on yourself. And I would also just say, like, use your network as much as possible. So if you know someone who might be able to give you an introduction, like, utilize that, because it's a role based around networking. And I think that's very much a respected point of entry.
Yeah, so beyond networking and working on your cover letter, are there any like online courses people should look for? Are there networking events that would be good to attend? Any kind of insider tips you have?
Yeah, I think personally with online courses, I haven't done any of them, so there's not much I can speak to on that. But I think if you just look at what the key competencies that typically come up, I think that would probably be really helpful. I actually did sales training with my organization recently, and that was so valuable. So if you're interested in like going down a more sales-based BD route, I would definitely recommend that. And I'm happy to share with you for the article what that actual course was. And I also, I'm part of a networking organization called Fernio, and that's specifically for people working within the BD industry. And they host dinners, events, and seminars. So if somebody's interested in learning more, it might be good to try and pop along to one of those events and meet with other people working within the space. And then I think as well, if you've got an industry that you really want to work in, just start attending networking events for that industry. It's as simple as going onto Eventbrite and just looking at what's happening and just going along. And even if you just pop in for 30 minutes and it's not worth it, then really there's nothing lost there. So I think just network as much as possible.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your sales background, because I know you said you had marketing and you worked in communications. So did you get the job before you had done any sales training and then they offered it to you afterwards?
Yeah, so I got the role without any very limited sales experience. I had worked on bids as a product manager. So I had worked in certain things that were definitely transferable, but yeah, really didn't have any experience within sales and BD. It really came down to the fact that I had written a really good cover letter, and then they took a chance on interviewing with me. And when we interviewed, they seen potential. So I think, just think about how you're applying for these roles. Some companies definitely are willing to bring on people with limited experience. You might have to go in at a lower level, but if it's what you want to do in the long term, then I think it's definitely worth it.
So I just want to, before I move on to the next question, let everybody know that we only have a few minutes left. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can. But our Fairy God Boss audience they're big readers. Everybody loves books. So do you have any book suggestions if they're interested in learning more about this?
I do. One is The Code of Confidence, and it's all about women's confidence in the workplace. And I think it's really good. I recently read it as part of a book club, and I think it was just really valuable. There's one as well, The Laws of Leadership, which was really good. And then I have loads more that I don't know off the top of my head, but happy to compile a little list. I know I said it before with the training, think about the skills that you're going to use. There's a lot out there. I also listen to a lot of various different podcasts, which I'm happy to share some of those as well. Often in the morning when I'm getting ready, I'm listening to a podcast and just trying to absorb as much knowledge as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, I can compile all those together and we'll include them in the article that everybody will be getting tomorrow. So you can make sure to check out all of Catriona's recommendations there. So I have a question about business development. Does every company have somebody in business development, any profitable company, or is it limited to a few different industries or sectors?
Yeah, I don't know I don't think every most companies will. I don't think everyone has. How that is defined might be more as a sales role, or it might sit within, it might be more marketing. If you've got something that's, direct to consumers, often it'll be marketing. So I think any B2B product typically will have a business development team because it is much more higher touch. If you're looking at a product or service as well that isn't lift and shift, it isn't cookie cutter, well then often you'll have a BD team because there's going to be, a lot of conversations that happen before a product is implemented. So I think it just depends on the nature of the product, but where there is any sort of complexities around a solution, then I think you can pretty much be assured there will be a BD or sales team.
Cool. We have one audience question here. I'm pretty introverted. Can I still do this job?
Absolutely. I actually was at a talk about this very recently. A lot of people think that you have to be extroverted. That is not the case at all. I think you can do really well being introverted. You probably will just have to push yourself a little further in terms of, as long as you're comfortable like talking with people, even if it is one-on-one. Often, it's just about building personal relationships with people. It's not about being the loudest, biggest room in the space. So I think it works for both. As long as you can build meaningful relationships, then I think it doesn't matter. And I think sometimes as well, like, introverted people can do much better too, because they can come across as being more sincere, more trustworthy, and often can do much better within the role.
Cool. So with that, I guess I want to say thank you so much, Catriona. It was a pleasure having you here today.
Yes, thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions as well and they want to touch base, happy to connect with anyone.
Yeah, so everybody, we will be sending out a recording of this tomorrow, including Catriona's contact info and all of her recommendations. But thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.